Hello, hello.
Hey there, Jason.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Oh, that's not what I want. Oh, thank you. Whoever is currently editing and putting in links, I was just about to edit and put in a link.
Yeah, that was me. I figured someone wanted to figure out what we were talking about.
Typical Brandon, being helpful.
Do my best.
I'm going to get a water real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Myself for CC the factory, so that we're kind of having to talk to rather than kind of be bought in last minute.
What is the outline question? I will put up and I will circle back and see why with me.
Kumar, if you can hear us, you got a hot mic.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Looks like we got a pretty decent showing here. Jason, you want to go ahead and kick it on off? We cannot hear you, so. And he ran away.
Anything?
And he's back. Now
Anything?
It works. You're good.
Yay,
You're good.
computers. Okay. I think and I hope that the first two are going to be quick. I added all three of these, but I think and I hope that the first two will be quick. The deprecate non-distributable layers PR is still open. I don't know if anyone has a reason we shouldn't do it. I just wanted to remind everyone that this PR is open. It got another approval last night. Please go take a look if you care about non-distributable layers or don't care about them and want them to be deprecated. The other topic, and I think it will be hopefully quick, quicker than the third one, is that I was talking with John, and a lot of our discussion has been about how can a client know that the registry processed the subject and will handle that and update the references, the referrers API endpoint. And John had a good idea, which I am sharing on his behalf, which was that the registry can respond with some header that says, we got your subject. It's like, it's this, not just like true false, but like subject processed as digest, which gives an affirmative response to the client that the registry knew that that was a thing. It could still lie about it, I guess, or take some time to update its references endpoint, but those are both sociopathic behaviors. So a client can be reasonably sure, given that response, that the registry is not lying to it, and know that the registry, that it doesn't need to then push the fallback tag approach. Yeah, Brandon, go ahead.
So I'm going to circle back real quick to the first one, the non-distributable layers, and ask a general OCI question that I think we've kind of gone back and forth on different, depending on when or who we ask, which is how many approves do we need to merge this? Because I know we need a majority to do a release. And so that makes sense, but I'm wondering for these ongoing individual PRs, if we can just do when we hit approve, because that's what GitHub is currently set to. So if anybody knows the answer to that one, feel free to chime in. We can always take that one offline as well. But I want to throw that out there because I would be comfortable merging this as it is right now, Jason.
You said you would be?
I would be, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think we have the safeguard that it requires a majority to get a release. So this is not really binding until there is a release. And if somebody sees this merge and then is like, no, you need, my house is built on non-distributable layers. You need these, I need these back. Then we can revert it and ask them why they did that.
All the more reason that I'm comfortable merging this with as much time as we spent leaving it open and the discussion that's happened on there. I feel like we're in a good place on that one.
Cool. Cool.
Unless someone has something on the first one, I'll jump to the second one real quick, which is I like the idea. It eliminates a round trip that I've got in some of my code, which is push the image, then query the refers API, see if it worked, and if it did, great. If it didn't, then I push the refer tag and update that thing. So eliminating a round trip is always nice.
Cool. Good idea, John. As a reward for this good idea, you have to write the PR that adds it to the spec.
I love it.
Or you can ask me to, and I will do it. But
the other thing I like about it is that it feels like it's fully backward compatible. So if I don't know about this header and I still do my old stuff, it's still going to work. If a registry doesn't implement the header, all the fallback stuff would still work the way it should. It's a nice little speed up.
If you're a client that is determined to push the fallback tag, even if the registry supports references, then you ignore the header and you just do it. And you did more work than you needed to, and you're not taking advantage of the feature, but that's your choice. So I think it's a really elegant solution.
Or even if I query the refers API still, even though I got the header.
Yeah.
That too.
Yeah. Nice work, John. All right. Unless there are any other things about those two topics or any other topics, I think the next one is going to potentially. Oh yeah, Aaron, go ahead, please.
Yeah. I've been joining a number of OCI related calls, as you might have noticed in the past couple months. I've also joined the ORAS OCI registry as storage community calls, and obviously they're pretty heavily invested in Artifact, and I think they default to Artifact on push. So has there been any outreach to them ahead of this potential change?
The Artifact manifest, you mean?
Yes, the Artifact manifest. Yes, they default to that on push.
Okay. I don't mean this. I mean this because I am very confused, and not because I think you are confused. I think I am confused. Does any registry support the Artifact manifest today? Where are they pushing to stuff that supports the Artifact manifest?
There are several.
Oh,
yeah.
Great.
Yes.
There are dozens.
there are multiple registries. There's actually quite a number that support the Artifact manifest, and so my concern here is that removing it ahead of 1.1, it's not just ORAS, I think, as a community, but I think a number of the major cloud providers also currently support Artifact manifest in their registries.
Brandon, Jesse, you got your hands.
The ones I know of, Docker Hub, SOT, I wouldn't be surprised if Azure does as well. Jesse, I'll let you fill in any others I'm missing.
Oh, I was going more abstract than that. I think if a registry has implemented a feature in an upcoming, not yet released spec, that they must have known that it could be deprecated. That's all I'd say. I mean, I think that's okay. I do believe, and Sajay could speak to Azure. I think Azure does, but it's in a dev preview posture. It's not like it's GA'd. So, and Zod, I'm sure that Zod is like, oh, they changed, fine. That project is so fast. So that's my take.
Just on the Docker Hub side, we don't support the manifests on the OCI side. The original artifacts we support, not the new ones just yet. We do have the code ready to go, which is not yet shipped.
I'm able to push the artifact manifest type now.
Okay, I'll have to have a look. But I thought we only supported the other one.
I also tested that one, and Docker Hub, I can push Artifact manifest.
Someone might have flipped the switch on you there, Chris.
Yeah.
When you weren't looking.
So I guess my thought here is, in terms of this change, is that there might be an impetus here, not just to make a change in spec, but also perhaps a blog post or some sort of outreach messaging is like, here's why we are making this change fairly late in the cycle, I think, because I think folks expected 1.1 to come out fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jesse's point is worth. I will agree with Jesse's point, right? That these are all pre-release things. OCI has maintained and will maintain the ability to change or remove that API in any breaking way. That's not to say we should like change it to the Mermaids manifest API just to break folks. Sorry, there's a bunch of stuff going in the chat now. I think the confusion in my head also has been that artifacts, the term OCI artifacts in common usage for years has been an image with a config media type that is weird, that is any other thing. And so a lot of folks have broadcast support for artifacts when that's what they mean, and they don't mean artifact manifests. Or I guess in Docker Hub's case, they did mean artifact manifests at some point. That became true. I think that's also Tianan's question about.
I think to Chris's point, originally it was just adding the new, removing the filter on the config media type, and then it's been within the past, I don't know, several weeks now they flipped the switch on the manifest type as well.
Yeah, Toddy, you have your hand up. Sorry, you've had it up for a while.
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused. Are we decided on that we will actually cut it? Because from at least Aaron's statement was like, we are already decided. I thought that we'll have the discussion today, whether that's something we want to do.
We have not decided anything. To be clear, the PR is open. Okay. My non-binding approval means nothing. No, Brandon has put a roadblock up just so we don't accidentally merge it. And even if it merged, we won't cut a release without a majority of people. So do not worry. This is not about to become law. This is about to become law.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. And sorry also for the confusion about what it takes to merge a PR. It sounds like what it takes to merge a PR is 2 people and then a majority to make it law, basically. I guess among the points in my response in that issue was sort of maybe buried, what is the user benefit of an artifact manifest versus an image that, an image manifest that contains some stuff? The user will never see the artifact. Like, we've messed up completely if a user ever sees this JSON. Jesse, do you have?
I'm just nodding to everything you say. You keep talking, I will put my hand down. Like everything you're saying. So I will say, for history's sake, and some of the people in this room might know this, I was around for image 1.0. I lost this battle then. I said, hey, people might want to store things that aren't images. Shouldn't we call it like an artifact? No, images. Then we did this whole lowercase a artifact thing. That's like, well, you could set config media type and images can then masquerade as artifacts. That's groovy. The reality is that it's nice. It's nice in my mind. I was talking to Michael about this last night. I was like, at the end of the day, tools have to care. People shouldn't have to care. So if we have something that works, we don't necessarily have to pull it all apart and change it, especially because it actually is confusing. There's a lowercase a and there's uppercase a. There's a media type and there's a config media type. There's, whatever. The whole thing revolves around tools working. And if tools already know this, we already know the rules of the road, they're well proven and they work, I am not opposed to dropping capital A artifact from the scope of 1.1. I don't think it breaks any of the use cases we're all really excited about. And in fact, greatly simplifies client tooling and takes the thing that Brandon and I have been like battle hugging over right out of the picture. We don't have to worry about it. So I think that I'm generally in favor of this, John. And I don't really have any questions.
Yeah, fewer battle hugs, more hugs. Consensual hugs.
They're still lovey. They're still lovey. I love you, Brandon.
Yeah. I think I don't know if this came through in the response to the issue to the PR either, but I don't know that we're saying artifacts never you know, die, never come back. But I think we could be saying this is out of scope for 1.1. As soon as 1.1 is cut, like open discussion on 1.2 or 1.1.1 or what, you know, call it whatever you want. And artifact manifest is back on the, not call it whatever you want.
No, just point of order. It would definitely be 1.2 or something else. It would definitely be a minor release. Okay, cool.
Yes, okay.
Whatever. Call it whatever you want.
All right. Everything I said was true except for that. I got him to disagree with me. We can delay the rollout of 1.2 or the rollout of artifact manifests to a potential future 1.2, and any registry that supports it can still support it as a pre 1.2 release instead of a pre 1.1 release. This is mostly as an effort to, you know, sometimes you just want to get a release out the door, and so you have to strip stuff out of it to get it over the fence. And I think this is an attempt at that, so that we can just sort of set in stone what we all agree on and push forward what we might still have questions about. I will lower my hand and stop talking.
I was wondering if we might want to call it a technical preview feature or something like that, or just something that's defined, it exists, but please don't use it yet feature. And that way we don't have to rewrite the whole PR a second time again. But either way, I see value in long-term having an artifact. I just don't see the value in creating them in the short term. And so I'm trying to balance those two views there. In the long term, the nice advantage is that when we look at the definition of what an OCI image is, it clearly says these are an ordered list of layers. And if you throw something out of order, you're not really following the spec. They always have to have a config blob, even if you didn't really want to push a config blob. So there are some advantages, but at the end of the day, they're so minimal, it's not worth breaking things. And so that's kind of where I agree.
Yeah, Brandon, I think it's interesting you mentioned that too. I think we also have the ability to loosen those restrictions in a future 1.x, where we say config blob is now optional, like required if this or layers generally mean ordered something, but we have the flexibility to say it would be a breaking, 1.2 release or 1.x release, but we can say that they mean something else if that is an easier step to storing arbitrary stuff in a registry than inventing a new manifest type that might never get adoption.
I feel like making the whole config descriptor optional would break way too many things.
1.2, baby. Just kidding. Toddy, go ahead.
Yeah, having in mind that maybe I'm the only proponent of the artifact type in this group right now, is I would like to really discuss the use case that I posted in the issue itself, where we want to actually update just the metadata or annotations for the image, where you don't have a config blob, you don't have any layers and so on. And that is the actually use case that we already are using for certain purposes. I just like, if we don't have the artifact type, and honestly, if we say that we are taking this out of the spec, I don't think that we'll be investing in creating those annotations in, like, although let's say we support that in ACR, so we will go and start pushing like empty blobs just to satisfy the image spec, right? Which will be, by my opinion, quite ugly implementation, right?
Yeah, no, I think
that purpose.
I think that's absolutely the fallback, like the behavior where I am personally recommending is that in order to, if you just want to store, foo equals bar in a registry somewhere and no blobs and no config and no other stuff, push an empty config, push an empty layer to satisfy the registry. It is ugly. It's very ugly. At least as far as client behavior, you'll push that empty blob once, or you'll push each empty layer once and the config blob once, and then deduping will prevent you from having to do it again. Like, there's no, the user sitting at a machine, like doing stuff, won't see any additional latency. You and I and all of us who knows how the plumbing works will know that it's gross, but the user won't.
Yeah, I agree with that. So the question is like, is it our expectation that only we are the users? Because I'm kind of looking at, let's say other folks are jumping on the bandwagon and saying, well, now registry can store more than images, because the message that we are sending with that is, and this is more kind of the philosophical explanation, is so far everybody is thinking container registry is only for container images, right? And if we continue to keep that message, we will have people saying, well, I'll go and store my S-bombs not with the container image. I'll go store them in, I don't know, S3 bucket, Azure Storage, Google Storage, whatever it is. I see that actually making it artifact registry and not container image registry as a message will open those folks actually to coming up. And then if we have these confusing implementations, less tools will be willing to go and do all this work and understanding also the behavior behind that. Because right now, pushing this with auras like simple artifact manifest is very simple. I understand that Crane sometimes fail when I was trying to pull things there, but that should be a simple update on the Crane tool, for example. So that's kind of my thought. And as I said, so if we are not adding artifact manifest, so we need to go and actually change all these things on our side, because I don't want to like have things that only ACR can do, right? Which actually right now I did quite some work. It's ACR Docker Hub, Zot supports artifact manifests already.
Yeah.
I don't know, Jesse, do you guys have any plans for ECR to do that?
That's not a segue to why my hand's up, but I will answer the question. Yeah, we have full 1.1 support running in our test environment, staging environment, and just waiting for a spec. So we will have code we have to change. It's just not public because well, this is why we don't ship things ahead of a spec because of this. Not a told you so. I'm very happy for all the brave souls. My hand was up to say first, Toddy, that was a super well organized set of thoughts. I think that was really good. I guess I have a counterpoint. So one of the things we see with supporting Helm charts in OCI registries, which ECR does, is that my customers continually come to me and they're like, it's broken, I hate it, because it's not a Helm repo. Artifact behaviors are typically different than OCI images. This was one of the things that I tried to bring up way back with the OCI image spec to begin with, is to say, will we ever store things other than images? I did bring this up in a call. We could look back in YouTube, maybe like September. I bet Brandon will remember, where I said something to the same effect. We already made this decision. Like, I'm okay with this. This is cool. And I kind of bought into the artifact thing, but we already made this decision back in 1.0. We said this is an image. This is an OCI registry. This is an image registry. Now we do have a way to store non-imagey things, and we all know how it works. And I think that comes back to, if your behavior works, like it does for Helm charts. Some customers really like that. And in Helm 3.8, you can install a chart right from an OCI registry. That's cool. The tool has to know how to do that. So now the question is, do we go change that tool? How many tools are there? Right now, there are some tools that already do capital A artifacts from 1.1 ahead of the spec. I would definitely say confidently that there is a lot more tools that already do the old style config.manifest, is the config.media type of the manifest artifact type. So I think that regardless, clients would have to change. The question is, who has to change? Well, nobody has to change to go to 1.1. They might just not change. But if they don't change now and we don't change the spec, then nothing needs to change. And so I think that's kind of the thing to look at here, is like, what's the value of having artifacts versus images? I think that is a case-by-case basis. And I think some work and some don't. And I think some are confusing. And then moreover, if we add this in, what changes? Like if we drop it, I think 1.1 becomes a lot simpler to reason about. It becomes a lot easier for us as a community to say, oh, that's actually 1.1 now. Like there's no more argument. We can always revisit it for 1.2 or 2.0 as John recommended. Like we can always revisit. This is not a one-way door. Nobody wants to kill it, right? It's just is it part of 1.1 right now? And I think the problems that ORAS solves will continue to keep solving, right? Because that is a way to use a registry as more of a general artifact store. I personally don't want to put NPM packages into an OCI registry. I have no interest in doing that. So I think that's the thing, is that we can balance it, right? For me, if we simplify this and just say, what's the easier way to get reference the refers API out? Because I think that's the kludge right now. That's what was really difficult. We look at Cosine. Cosine's a wildly popular tool. Everybody loves it. It's kind of ugly and it doesn't want to be ugly anymore, right? So like, can we give it a refers API and put it in the spec? And then maybe 1.2, now can we make the masquerading images problem go away or not? I think that's what I would recommend, is to see if we can just tease them apart and come to a quorum.
Yeah, my own take is there are three parties. There is the producer of an artifact, there is the storage of an artifact, and there is the consumer of an artifact. And right now, my most comfortable position is to say the people that are storing and consuming, it would be good if they started getting on board with the capability to handle this when they start showing up, just to have that code written and ready to go. And we just say that anybody producing it, don't produce it yet. That feels like the key detail to me. As long as nobody's producing them, but the plumbing is in there for later on when it happens, I think everybody that's been writing the plumbing will be in a better place. Everybody that's looking to consume it later on will be in a better place. And that would be my take. Toddy, I think you're after me. Or no, I think I jumped on top of Aaron. Sorry.
Aaron is in.
Yeah, I think the question for me is, one, I guess I would say is, Jesse, you said something about not wanting to store NPM packages in an OCI registry. There actually are, I think, a lot of people who are very interested in that. And there's folks at Red Hat looking at that. And look, whether you agree with sort of their motivation for that, I think whether you look at projects like Notary or Sigstore and Cosine and ORAS and others, is that there's this sort of, I think, the sense that I've gotten joining all these different committee calls over the past few months is that there's a lot of motivation to move towards artifacts, and that there was a sense among those other groups that Artifact was essentially a done deal that had already been merged to the repo for the 1.1 RC, I think. And to take it away at this point feels maybe like, I think there's some reputational risk that maybe needs to be assessed here, is that there's already working implementations using Artifact, and to say no to that or potentially shut the door on it will make those parties maybe think, why would OCI consider this in the future, right? If they were going to go back on that. And there's also, I think, the risk of folks having, there's a lot of open source contributors, right, that have essentially toiled on this and now see that as potentially wasted work. I think I would go to something which I forget who might have said it, is there's this argument about the simplicity of the spec and getting 1.1 out the door, but it seems like this isn't the sticking point as far as I can tell, right? Like Artifact is already sort of working in a lot of implementations. So what I guess is gained by making this change so late in the cycle, it's not clear to me how that helps get 1.1 out sooner when there are working implementations and tools today.
I'm gonna jump the hand queue just really quick because I want to respond to one thing and clarify what I was saying. I don't mean, and Sajay called this out too, I don't mean that the mission of the working group should change or that we should go back in time and change what we were doing. I think Sajay just said this in chat. The working group was about storing related content that aren't images. Completely agree. SBOM signatures, things that make sense to ride next to an image. I think we're all about that. And I think the refers API makes that sane. Whereas right now it's difficult. The related content is definitely the part that I think is that's doing the most work in that sentence, right? It's related content. It's not new content types. It's the related content. I just wanted to clarify that. So I do have faith in that. I don't think an NPM package is related content to anything. That's kind of why I use that wacky example. And then you're telling me people want to do that. I'm like, oh my God, fine. But that's my.
I just want to really quickly respond. I'm at Pulumi, and we're actually thinking of, evaluating OCI registry as a mechanism for distributing plugins across multiple architectures. And so I was actually considering throwing this on the agenda is demoing using OCI registry as a mechanism for distributing and acquiring plugins. And I'm using the artifact type. I think Homebrew is another example where they're currently using image index and image, but they would like to move to artifact in the future. So there are pretty widespread implementations that are not, I think everyone here with a Mac is already using OCI registry to distribute non-images and acquire them on a frequent basis.
Yeah, you said a couple of things, and I'd like to rebut some of them too. As a user, I use Homebrew, and I don't know or care that they implemented it as an artifact or an image or whatever. Like, to me, I brew install and I'm happy and go about my day, right? If they did the work to migrate to an artifact manifest, I would never notice. I would hopefully never. I mean, only if something went wrong would I notice. And if they did that, they would have to. The thing that they would be doing is limiting the number of registries they are portable to. Oh, sorry, I cut off John, and potentially many others. I'm going to lower my hand and let him go.
I think Toddy's hand and Sajay's hands were up before mine.
My God, I'm bad. Sorry.
Nope.
I can go because it's kind of, I want to relate a little bit to what Jesse said. So I understand that actually we as or the tools actually need to be responsible for handling that, right? And the tools can go and actually hack it as they want it, right? Because it's hidden from the user. Totally agree with that, Jason. Though I will kind of, a lot of tool makers actually looked at the artifact type as, we want to actually store other stuff in the registries. As Aaron mentioned, like NPM or Brew, or we have like our PowerShell team wants to actually store stuff there. And they saw that as opportunity that actually they can leverage. And there are many other reasons why they actually store it in a registry and not, let's say, in some other storage system. But what I wanted to say is that, and kind of what also Brendan said, so if what we've seen in our discussions is people don't want to change the consume side of the thing until there is a content produced that actually they can consume. So if we tell the publishers don't publish artifact types, the consumers will never start actually consuming artifact types. And the problem that we'll have with this is like, we will generate enough content that uses the old structure and the old manifest, and not enough actually content that uses the artifact manifest, because we will all rush to actually start pushing S-bombs and signatures and whatever else in the registries. After that, it will be much harder for the tools to really handle both and have backwards compatibility. So if we decide, from me, if we decide right now that we don't have artifact type, that will be dead in the water.
I don't think I understood the point. I think I missed something.
Yeah, I can repeat it. So in order for the consumers to consume artifact manifests, you need to publish content that is published with artifact manifests. So if we tell the publishers don't publish this content, the consumers will not actually change their code to consume it. That's kind of the point.
So are you saying that is a justification not to remove it from 1.1, or?
Yes, because the tools will have no kind of incentive to go and actually start using artifact manifests. So if we tell them that there is a artifact manifest right now in 1.1, as you heard, like NPM or Brew or other teams, they will start using that to actually publish the content with the proper manifest. Else, they will go and do the hacking around the image manifest to publish the content, and you will generate like a lot of content that is with the old manifest. In the future, if you want to introduce, as you guys are saying, artifact manifest, then the tool will need to handle backwards compatibility with the old one. We are already seeing with these fallbacks that are happening between 1.1 and 1.0 that it is really hard to handle it.
Sure. So I fail to see the practical difference between using the image manifest with a say different config media type and using the artifact manifest from like end user perspective. Like, I see the difference, right, as a client and registry author, and like I know that the data structure in the registry has renamed a field and gotten rid of a field and added a field, but like in practice, they're equivalent to me, right? Like there's no additional power you gain with the artifact manifest over the existing image manifest, other than if you use the artifact manifest to just attach annotations to something, it is about 30 bytes smaller than the equivalent image manifest, which doesn't seem sufficiently compelling to break backwards compatibility with existing registries and clients to me. I think that, you know, if we added this, I don't think 1.1 is an appropriate version number if we care about Simver, which I don't particularly care about Simver, but I think it's, you know, that is kind of a backwards and compatible change to make, is that, oh, now like I'm using 1.1, but it doesn't work with 1.0. I think a lot of consumers would expect that 1.1 and 1 is backwards compatible with 1.0 usually, but like, I know it's like a new feature, so maybe you could argue that I'm wrong, and that's fine. But the value of this working with all current existing registry and client implementations and not having to wait for on the order of years for it to get rolled out to everything we care about seems to be much greater than I don't really see any value and to choosing a backwards incompatible type for your artifacts. Like, I understand that there are clients that have gone ahead and started using this, and I would say that is like a premature change to make, but also it's useful for us to have seen that and then had the arguments about the fallback behavior and trying to figure out what should clients do. My conclusion from the past couple of weeks was, this doesn't seem worth the trouble if like every client author now has to figure out the right thing to do, especially if they're functionally equivalent. So that's why I opened this PR, is to say, like, does anyone care? It seems like a couple of people do, but I just don't think it's worth the churn that that's going to cause for the rest of the ecosystem. And I'll yield to other folks.
Sajay, you've had your hand up for a very, very long time.
No, thank you. I just want to make sure John, who opened the PR, had his word in. Otherwise, it would be hard to kind of like get a sense of where this is coming from, right? And just for everybody's sake, I think there are. I want to probably channel a little bit of IBM Mike here because he's not here. The spec is about moving the industry forward, right? We shouldn't forget that. We have to acknowledge that we are hacking the hell out of image spec right now. And I think that's a fair statement. And I don't think it's a good place to be. It's something that we all collectively agree on. The disagreements that I have with the not value add is the strictness of the image spec as to the config descriptor needs to exist, which means we need to handle 0-byte blobs or 2-byte blobs depending on the registry. So there is already registry specific implementation that clients will have to do. The layer is specified as an ordinal list with layers 0 required. So I think the hinge here is, if folks want to use the registry to store non-blob related content, there is a hack. But if that scenario is not real, then I think the image manifest is more than enough. So we need to kind of like at least quantify, is there a use case where there is a non-image, non-blob based manifest? And then if that is the case, then I think I'd agree with John here that there is no value in adding another artifact manifest. Instead, just a specification calling out that to store things that are not image related, this is how you lay out the manifest in this call today. That's all I have.
I genuinely don't remember the order of hands. Brandon or Aaron, you can go ahead. No? All right.
I saw Aaron looking down, so I figured he was going for his mute button there. I just wanted to chime in and disagree a little bit with what Tody was saying earlier there, which was that clients, it gets really complicated to be able to handle both and whatnot. As someone that's gone through the effort of making the client, it hasn't been that difficult for me. It's 2 media types I'm supporting instead of 1, and the fields are lining up. So from the client perspective of how is this stored in the registry, it's been pretty straightforward for me to handle both media types, and to currently when I'm producing them, I default to pushing the image manifest, and that way I keep that portability out there. And so for me, it's been fairly straightforward to implement that and deploy that. And I feel like any client that jumped that queue, that wanted to say we're only going to support the artifact media type and nothing else, I wouldn't have a problem with saying that client shouldn't be considered supported until OCI 1.2 instead of 1.1. Just knowing that we want some lead time in there. We want some kind of grace period for registries to be able to upgrade their set.
Yeah, I'll be totally honest. I don't remember what I was trying to reply to when I raised my hand 20 minutes ago. So I'm gonna sheepishly lower it now.
Yeah, I think I would just say is I'd be opposed to removing artifact, just sort of as a. I think the engineering argument that John made is exactly right. Is like the power to weight ratio is really poor, and so I'll acknowledge that. I think what artifact gives is more about product and messaging of OCI and the direction sort of forward, as opposed to anything about technical capability. Right? There was nothing, I think, fundamentally stopping folks from pushing cat pictures as layers to Docker Hub and GHCR and others. Adopting artifact was more, at least my impression was, it signaled a reorientation of the OCI format and registries. And I think I'd be concerned, I am concerned, that the appearance of dropping artifact will be, no, OCI is doubling down on this is for images. And regardless, like all the good sort of messaging in the world won't remove the fact that there's a PR removing artifact ahead of 1.1 release, right? Like that's what folks might see and stumble upon. And I don't know. I think that's why I would be opposed to this.
I acknowledge that it is embarrassing to be making this change at this time. I think, hindsight being 2020, I wish we'd never gone to Camelot, right? Like, let's just never have it put in. I do think that we have still done a mammoth amount of work, and I've been to like hundreds of hours of meetings about the refers API endpoint, which I think, to Sajay's point, moves the industry forward and shows, demonstrable value. I cannot wait to start seeing that pop up in registries and start using it and start writing clients against it. I am personally much less interested in artifact type or artifact manifests, because I know that I could always have pushed any cat pictures to registries. And I think if the main reason not to do it is we'll look backward facing, or we'll look like we are not innovating, then I think I would point you to the entire new endpoint that does a bunch of cool stuff that we just spent a year designing, and not the like slightly different JSON schema that no one will ever see as a signal for our innovation.
Okay, back to agreeing with Jason. So yeah, I think that summarizes kind of the context. I think a couple of specific things I would say. So as I said before, and I maybe said it in a clumsy way, 1.1 solves a lot of problems for artifacts, lowercase a artifacts, whatever you want to say, not a new media type, but things that aren't images, which are already in OCI registries. I think what I'm hearing is people want things that aren't images, but we already do have that. Like I said, we have a gajillion Helm charts in ECR, for example. Like we already do have that. You can push cat pictures now. I think the thing that makes 1.1 really special is the refers API and that work. And I'm kind of mirroring what Jason said. What we don't want to do is disavow all of the users or community members who are excited about capital A artifacts. And I think that can be a messaging thing. I think we say to detangle a lot of what we are referring to sometimes as the upgrade problems, or what I would say is future minor version versus legacy support, right? Those issues are going to keep tangling us up indefinitely. And if we intend to not do this one and done spec like we did with 1.0 and left it for 6 years or whatever, 7 years, I think it makes sense for us to say, for the sake of 1.1 moving, we could just accept this PR for now with the intent that we can always bring it back for 1.2. And I think that we can message that in a certain way that doesn't sound like, by the way, PS, we don't really want to do it. I think we're capable of doing that as a community, as long as we on this call agree that we're capable of doing that. So I didn't mean to confuse things with, I don't want to store NPM. Like, if you want to store NPM, that's fine. You can do it today. That's kind of the point. What I want is sanity and references, and we could always explore new media types in the future. That's kind of my take on it. I kind of repeating myself, but I wanted to make clear what I was trying to say.
Would it be more palatable to you, Aaron, if this PR included language in the image manifest, like indicating that the config descriptor media type is important, and had some explanation of, implementation should allow like arbitrary media types here, and like should not validate XYZ, and maybe a link to a blurb about artifacts or something. I just I want this ability, and I'm currently speaking to you through like a computer that thinks it's talking to a teletype over dial up something or other. It's like, can we just use the infrastructure in place so that we don't have IPv6? I'll yield.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very funny point to make. You're right. Like we're using abstractions on abstractions, and we pay the cost for those incrementally, I think, constantly at different layers of the stack. I think what I would say is, if OCI 1.1 doesn't contain the artifact media type, hypothetically, then I think implementers, and there's sort of like this critical mass, I think, of especially I've noticed in different communities of people looking at storing Python, pip potentially using OCI as a distribution format, Homebrew already using OCI image, other communities, they're gonna ossify on whatever is supported in OCI 1.1. And so this was like an opportunity, I think, to make like a real clear change. Is like OCI 1.1 is the supported registry for our artifacts, whatever they are, whether they're Bloomy packages or Python packages or NPM or PowerShell. I think that if we drop artifact from the spec, those communities are just going to say we're image forever, and there won't be an impetus for us to ever adopt artifact. Now that you can definitely make the case that okay, let's just never adopt artifact, but I think there's value in positioning OCI in that forward-looking direction, and certainly this conversation alone has me concerned that I need to go back and actually change my client code because I had already written code to target OCI artifact, and I was expecting to only support OCI artifact. So that's just an implementer's perspective.
Yeah, I recognize that is frustrating, right? I hate it when that happens to me, and I don't want to inflict it on anyone else. I still think that in the grand balance and scheme of everything, unfortunately, the cost of you doing this work and having to retarget is orders of magnitude less than the pain of everyone having to maintain artifact type or artifact manifest and everything, registry side and client side, and user confusion about I can push an artifact to Docker Hub, but I can't push it to Google's artifact registry. Like, no, we support artifact as defined in 2018, not artifact as defined in 2023. I think, yeah, I know that that's frustrating. I don't want to inflict that on you. I'm sorry that we are talking about doing this, but yeah. John, you have your hand up as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I am sympathetic to your cause. I've been in the situation before, and it is very frustrating. And I'm happy to play the part of a villain, having come in the final hour to take away everyone's favorite feature. And I do bear some of that responsibility. I think at the beginning of the working group stuff, I basically disappeared for personal reasons. And haven't really taken a look at this until we got to the arguments about backwards compatibility. But so I'm happy to take that role on if that's helpful, but I don't think it is. The thing I want to throw out is no one is really happy with OCI 1.0 format. Really, we've spent 4 or 5 years talking about OCI 2.0 in terms of okay, maybe gzip tarballs were pragmatic, but are not the final state of distributing operating system images. I do think there is a lot of room in an OCI 2.0 when we make significant breaking changes that give us a lot of power. I don't think that 1.1 is that time. But I think it is reasonable that there will be a new format, and I think that having a non-container specific data structure makes sense at that time when we're already going to rip off some band-aids.
I think it's only me left. Sorry. One question, and I'm trying to understand really the backwards compatibility. So if we tools publishers, they can continue to publish with the image manifest, right? They are not required to use the artifact manifest. So adding it to the spec does not actually make that a requirement, or do I understand the spec wrong?
No, you understand it correctly. I think that then we fall back into the issue that so that nobody, if a producer of content wants to have an assurance of portability across every registry, even Quay 0.7 from 1998, then they have to use the image manifest. And so if you value portability, you have to use image manifest. And now we're kind of falling into the argument of why would they ever upgrade if they care about portability?
Yeah, that's one of the things.
What I'm saying is we've already passed the event horizon of there is no reason for folks to upgrade to artifact manifest if there is already support for image manifest everywhere. then maybe we've already passed the critical juncture where we can't go back. And if that's the case, then we shouldn't commit ourselves to supporting something new that we think might not be widely adopted in practical use.
And that's, I think, where Aaron and I were coming from, because if we actually don't add this in 1.1, is I don't think that anybody will be looking for this in the future. But okay, my question is more like, okay, if people want portability, they will publish with the image manifest, right? We'll expect that, as Brandon said, the tools to be able to handle both the image and the artifact manifest, right? However, we are opening for the folks that actually want to use the artifact manifest and only the artifact manifest, and that's their conscious decision to actually use it. So I don't see why actually we will not include this in the spec. Having in mind that it's already agreed upon, and all the arguments that actually go into the chat, like, okay, we look silly because it's like we are about to release it next weekend.
I don't mind looking silly. I look silly every day. I would say, I think OCI's one and only value to the world and the internet is maintaining portability, is in having some forum for all of the registries and clients to come together and say, you accept this, I accept this. I produce this, you accept it. If we are going to make compromises on portability, then why not just go invent your own API that does exactly what you want? You could do that, right? You could go create, I could go create Jason's artifact manifest and make a registry that supports it and a client that supports it. But portability is the real core value that we should, that's why we're here. That's why we're all doing this.
Jason, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree and say that we are not doing a good job with portability. Like my testing shows.
I don't think we're doing a good job. I just think that's the North Star we're chasing. We're doing a bad job, but we're chasing it.
Okay.
And if we turn away from it, that's what we've been doing.
Yep. Okay.
Jesse, what's up?
We have 2 minutes left. I'm going to defer to Josh Zalitsky if he wants to say something. He didn't get his hand in. Are you good or not? I read back. I saw you didn't need to speak, but I liked what you said.
Yeah, I just, I really see all sides of this. My main reason for not doing it is just a matter of creating a precedent that, you spend a year in OCI and that's how you can get things done, and then at the last minute it'll be ripped out under you. So it's more of I want the community to stay a community after this release, and that's really my only reason. I think technically it does make sense to drop it, and I just, it would have been nice to come to this conclusion back in the fall. I've already me and Sajay gave a talk at KubeCon about this thing, it's so, but if I just drop my principles and
I don't like that last part. And your principles are not your ego either, Josh Zalitsky. You don't need to drop them. You're making good observations. You could stop there.
No, I drop my principles on a daily basis. So
I don't. You hurt my soul sometimes. All right, love you. So look, I want to say one thing before we drop. I've said it before. I'm going to repeat it for the context of this. I think we're conflating implementations and specs. I think often we conflate even client tooling versus the role of a specification, right? So the role of a spec is not the same as running code. You can always choose to do things. You have product decisions and spec decisions. I think the next time we talk as a group, if we kind of go into it starting there, we might come to a different resolution for this. The specification is meant to indicate how you can build something, full stop. So whether you roll it out in a year or not part of a spec. Whether or not you implement it or not part of a spec, right? So if we want to look at it that way and think a little bit more and noodle on this PR, I would be in support of that. I don't really mind either way either. I think use cases are met with the refers API. As a reminder, I wanted artifacts back at 1.0. So that's my take.
My parting thought is that we'll be right back in the same situation in 6 months if we push this off to 1.2. So to consider what it's going to take.
Maybe I'll do a better job next time of expressing my opinion.
So what I want to say is just consider what it should take for OCI to introduce something new that would be backward incompatible what kind of steps do we need to take, and how should we handle that kind of rollout? So something to think about. And also something to think about, there is the notes that Amy linked in the meeting minutes for me next week. So feel free to throw something on the agenda for that one. And look forward to seeing everybody there that shows up in person.
Thanks, everybody. Great discussion.
See you, folks.